Now, coming back to SDN in the core network, I mean, clearly one of the issues the industry will face is these optical boxes. They're costly, large install base, maybe not that easy to upgrade. Maybe they just won't ever acquire open flow interfaces, for example. Do you think it's realistic to consider an SDN controller talking to them over some legacy style interfaces like SNMP or through Telnet to their command line interface, or do you think that's really a non-starter?
I wouldn't say it's a non-starter, but there's still a tremendous amount of growth in the optical network. I mean, certainly you've seen our announcements. We're constantly adding new 100 gig routes. So that is new equipment going in. So there is growth. Again, in the end, it's the optical layer that has to catch all of that demand that we discussed earlier. It's not just the routers and the switches. It all falls back down to the fiber. Yeah. So there is enough growth there that, again, if the vendor community were to start to put the appropriate hooks, and I don't know if OpenFlow is the right one or not, but the right control protocols to connect to an SDN environment of removing path computation and some of the path monitoring up to a more centralized view, it would make a lot of sense. So I think getting to optics is important to us. Again, it's a more limited set of use cases right now than the ones we've been describing. Okay. I mean, I think when the low-hanging fruits maybe for optics is really going between the big data centers. Yeah. There we are chewing up wavelengths, right? And yet today we use those wavelengths to go through a whole bunch of router hops. If I had more control over the optical layer, I wouldn't need to go up to those higher layers of protocol. Because in the end, when I'm going between data centers, I just want the integrity of the data moving from data center 1 to data center 2. I don't really care about IP or MPLS, I just want the integrity of the data.
Sure, right. So, I mean, using SDN techniques to provision more deeply into the lower layers of the network might actually make sense there, because right now, those lower layers tend to be rather fixed and static in their provisioning because it just takes too long to change them. Yep. So you do see real value in that?
I do see value in that. As you get into a multiplicity of data centers interconnected, you'd like to think that you could get into more of a mesh framework for resiliency, geo-redundancy, where you're not doing everything one by one, but you have a pool of resources of bandwidth and wavelengths available to you, and you can provision those really on demand through this capability. And when I say on demand, I don't mean a person at a screen. I mean tying it again back into the data center. Yeah. And
it's an API.
That same operations model, so that you want to move this data set or these blocks of stored information from this data center to this one. That should be enough to trigger the bandwidth. Yeah. I shouldn't have to have someone that's an optics operator go and figure out what
it's abstracted away.
Exactly.
You just say what you want the network to do, and it takes care of shuffling the layers in the appropriate and hopefully optimum way. Without you having to worry about the details.
Exactly. I think that is the big vision of SDN at all layers, right? Is to abstract those away and simplify the operations, allow you to really focus on the services and the things that drive the revenue, and not worry about all the sort of the costs underneath that, all the nits and bits that have to be taken care of to build that service.
Now, you mentioned earlier that you saw SDN as providing end-to-end service management rather than silos. It sort of implies that SDN is this sort of massively overarching concept that potentially touches every aspect of the network, from some centralized but distributed and very scalable function. I mean, is that ultimately your vision, or do you think that SDN will end up being some kind of a hierarchy of controllers with controllers for specific kinds of either service domains or physical domains, and then sort of Uber controller on top of all that?
Yeah, I agree. It is a hierarchy. In fact, that's what concerns me a little bit, although it's natural, again, in the life cycle of a new technology. When you look at, I'll bring up Nicera. When you look at what they built an OpenFlow controller. Yeah. But to bring it to market, you can say, I have an open, here, do something with it. So they had to build some connections northbound of just the controller for certain services. So you see that sort of vertical integration, and that's natural. No one's just going to make a lot, no one's looking just to sell, the stack of just the controller. So they tie it into some orchestration for some suite of services in the market they're going after. That does say, though, that you will then need some higher layer of orchestration that sits above these controllers. Yeah. And the controllers won't be uniform. They will be different vendors, but they might, as you say, it might be a different type of controller. Well, we already have two. I mean, the data center, I want that orchestration layer controlling both the VM, which could be VMware, Xen, or pick your favorite VM capability for the compute and storage, and I wanted to control virtual switches, which could be open flow. So already I have 2 controllers I want to orchestrate across. As we move into the wide area network, it's going to be a multiplicity. So it's not a flat network from a control point of view. So I'll ask a question then of both of you, which is, you see the interest, certainly. There's a lot of forums coming up, the ONF, network function. I'm sure there's other things. The ITF has a number of working groups that are touching on SDN-like capabilities now. So as you're building product, how fast do you see this evolving? You're balancing your existing products you're selling us with how quickly you think this will be adopted.
I mean, as I said earlier, it's an early stage. We see this as evolving in the next probably 5 years or so. But we do, as you said, we're building our network elements with SDN and OpenFlow in mind. And we are actually now active in different areas, up in the cloud, trying to solve computing power issues, as we said earlier, the service chaining, and in the backhaul. So from our end, I think we could be ready soon to start doing closer cooperation, which we're doing today with some partners, and start bringing products to markets sometime soon.
From our point of view, I mean, we've got tremendous technology assets in the control plane space, a great reputation in that area for delivering incredibly complex technology protocols that comply with the standards and so on. And we're about applying that technology in the most practical possible way to making SDN a reality. So we've got a number of different prototypes and kind of proofs of concept already. And right now we're just talking to network operators to identify, where are the early opportunities. And I mentioned extending MPLS to the edge right now. That seems to be where we're finding a bit of a sweet spot. So I think that's probably where we're going to be going next with this.
Yeah, well, thanks.
Thanks, Stu. Very much enjoyed the discussion.
Thank you, Stu.
Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks, Martin. Thank you.